What is up, people? My name is Andrew, and I'm the host of Food with Friends. Today, I come to you from Palo Alto, where we get to learn the story of Michael over mushu vegetables, pad thai, and spring rolls. In part one of Michael's story, we'll learn about how as a sixth grader in the Bronx, he decided he was going to become a physicist, and he made it happen. Let's jump in. Alright, what's up everyone? My name is Andrew, this is Michael, and this is Food with Friends. And then
Hi everybody.
Now we just start eating.
All right, this is mushu vegetables. So these are pancakes and there's some sauce here. So you just put some sauce on the pancakes and then fill them with this. This is garlic eggplant without the garlic. You put that on rice, and then this is pad thai, Thai noodles, and you just eat that from your plate.
Awesome. How did you guys find this place?
I think some friends of ours told us about it,
Yeah.
and we went and really liked it, and it's become a favorite of ours now.
Become a regular?
Yes.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx in New York City.
All right, so this is a little bit different.
It is, yes. It's much nicer here. My father taught accounting at a high school in the Bronx, and my mother was a homemaker, and there were 6 kids in the family. I was number 2.
All right.
And we were all a year apart. That's called Irish sextuplets.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the food scene like over in the Bronx?
There's lots of ethnic restaurants, but we never went to them because my father was very picky about food.
Yeah.
I never had fish growing up.
He just wasn't a fan?
Or any kind of seafood. Yeah, he could only eat certain foods prepared a certain way.
All right.
Like spaghetti with butter and ragu sauce on it.
You know what? That's not bad.
Yeah. So I think probably the most interesting part of my life story is in 6th grade, I read a popular science book titled The Universe and Dr. Einstein. And it was about Einstein's work on special and general relativity and also quantum physics.
Yeah.
And it just completely blew me away. I was just knocked out by the idea you could understand stuff in detail on the Earth and also in space. And that's when I decided I was going to be a physicist.
Wow. In 6th grade, you were like, this is the direction I'm heading in life.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so cool that you had that clear of a drive from that young of an age. Because I feel like often people bump around along the way until they go, I think I'll try this. But you were clear shot ahead.
Right. So it was a form of conceit to think that as a 6th grader that I could become a physicist.
All right, so 6th grade, you go, I'm going to become a physicist.
And in 8th grade, our class had a project where we would learn about different colleges and learn about different fields of study. And so I already knew I wanted to do physics, so I looked for the best colleges.
Yeah.
And so in 8th grade, I decided I wanted to go to MIT because it seemed to be one of the best colleges for physics, and also wasn't that far away. It was in Boston. So when I was a senior, I applied to MIT and got in, and went there for 4 years and got my degree in physics.
Wow. MIT, good choice?
MIT was some of the best of times and some of the worst of times.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared. I'd gone to a public school and I wasn't really prepared for the academic rigor of MIT. Very fortunately, the first year is pass-fail. But even then, it turned out I flunked my freshman physics class at MIT.
Really?
Yes, and so it was a big setback because I talked to my professor and I told him I really wanted to be a physicist, and he looked at me and said, "Mr. Heaney, you will never be a physicist."
So did that light a fire, or did it hold you back, or kind of a little bit of both?
It stunned me for a long time. For a semester. So I thought about majoring in other things, but then I decided, no, I'm dead set on becoming a physicist. So I took the summer off that summer and studied on my own the physics class that I'd flunked out of.
Yeah.
And made good progress in understanding what it was about and what I'd misunderstood. And then I went back to MIT and retook the class and passed it. And then I continued on to get my bachelor's degree in physics from there. And I did my thesis, my undergrad thesis on star birth in molecular clouds in the galaxy. So MIT had a radio telescope that you could actually program to point at different places in the sky.
Yeah.
And some of those places, there were just these large clouds of molecules, everything from hydrogen gas to ammonia, to even some of them had amino acids in them. And so you would point the radio telescope there and you could measure the transitions, the atomic and molecular level transitions.
Yeah.
And from the height of those peaks, you can infer what the temperature was inside the cloud. And also you can infer how big it was by how broad across the sky the cloud was. And from those things, together with some guesswork, you could infer whether it was big enough to collapse into a star or just remain a molecular cloud.
That is so cool.
It was. And so it was wild that as an undergrad, I was able to actually just go to a star map in the library and then pick places to look and then have this real radio telescope point at the places to measure stuff. So after I did my thesis, which was in radio astronomy, a branch of astrophysics, and I realized while I was in the group, I was working with a group of grad students and a professor, and I realized that there were almost no job opportunities for someone who got a degree in radio astronomy.
What jobs were there for someone who got a job?
Almost entirely professorships at universities, and there was only like a couple of openings across in the entire country for people who did radio astronomy. So I wanted to stay in physics. So I decided to go into something that was more practical and widespread. So I decided to go into solid state physics.
Okay.
So instead of getting a job out of college, I applied for a job at IBM Research Division.
Okay.
And I went to IBM and worked there for 2 years, working on basically solid state physics, making thin films of different materials and analyzing multi-layer semiconductors. I was a glorified technician for the PhDs who worked there. The PhDs were doing the research.
Yeah, but you had a job and you were learning.
Yeah.
What was it like working at IBM?
This was actually back in the golden days of industrial R&D labs. Like Bell Labs was at its peak, and IBM was also at its peak. IBM had recently, or while I was there, or just before I got there, they had won another Nobel Prize for the scanning probe microscope. Actually, a couple of people got a Nobel Prize for that. And they already had a Nobel laureate down the hall from where I worked. While I was there, I tried to learn as much as I could about solid state physics. So one of the scientists who was working there, he was writing a new book on solid state physics.
Yeah.
And so I sort of found out about that, and I kind of went to him and asked if I could proofread his chapters.
Yeah.
So he let me proofread the book, and I worked the problems, and he checked the problems over, and he basically walked me through his book, teaching me solid state physics as we went along.
So you got to help him, and you got a free education.
Right, in solid state physics. So, and also, perhaps even more significantly, I met a half a dozen PhDs who worked at the lab. This was the Thomas J. Watson Research Lab in Yorktown Heights, New York. And they were all doing fascinating work in different fields.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. And I eventually found out that they'd all gotten their PhD from the same professor at Berkeley.
Okay.
So I decided I was going to go to Berkeley and get my PhD from that professor.
Yeah.
So after working at IBM 2 years, I went to Berkeley for my PhD. And I worked with the professor, John Clark.
Who had helped all these guys.
All these guys, yeah. The other worthwhile thing that came out of it was I realized that industrial R&D could actually be a very fun, enriching way to work. The people there were doing great science, and they had plenty of freedom, and they were also contributing to IBM's semiconductor business.
Yeah.
So it seemed like the best of both worlds. Some of them were doing basic science, and some of them were building things that went into IBM products. So they were having an impact on the real world.
Yeah.
So I decided that I wanted to become an industrial R&D physicist, which was unusual. When I went to Berkeley, there were about 40 people in my starting class. And I was the only one who wanted to go into industrial R&D after getting my PhD. Everybody else wanted to be a professor. Almost all of them had just gone straight from undergrad to grad school.
Okay, they
So
hadn't
they'd
had
never
any.
been exposed to an industrial R&D lab, and
Yeah.
they'd always looked up to their professors as gods and wanted to be like their professors. So I did my thesis at Berkeley with John Clark, and I had met Kirsten while I was at Berkeley, and as you know, she became my wife.
Yep.
And so she wanted to stay in the Bay Area for various reasons, and so I decided to look for a job in the Bay Area. And so I found a job in Silicon Valley, and I've been working in Silicon Valley since then.